All right, so the article that I decided to dissect was titled "For the Sports Entertainment Business, Coronavirus is Taking a Huge Toll." And it looks specifically on the impacts of the coronavirus on broadcasting companies like Turner Broadcasting, NBC, and CBS. So just kind of a short, quick introduction here. I already mentioned the topic, COVID-19's impact on sports broadcasting companies, and this is written by Stephen Zitchik of the Washington Post. And then just kind of a timestamp because I know everything's moving so quickly with all of this coronavirus stuff. So it's written on March 28th. Um, kind of at the height of all of the things shutting down was when it was written. And then some of the sections, if you guys want to pull it up and follow along, that it might follow in class, is the commercializing media rights, where I actually got that picture, that figure in the bottom there, but it will be coming back, so we'll explain it then. A summary of the reading. One of the quotes that I think summarizes it in one sentence came from Patrick Risch of the sports business program at Washington University Olin Business School in St. Louis. He said that March Madness benefits a lot of parties, so when it doesn't happen, it costs a lot of parties. And basically what it means with that is there's so many entities that go into making sure that March Madness happens. You got broadcast, you got people on the floor, event managers, the list could go on and on. So there's so many different entities that depend on this going on. So when it doesn't happen, there's a lot of entities that are going to be hurt. Specifically in this article, as I mentioned before, broadcasting. So NCAA and the member schools and the broadcasters all mutually benefit from the TV deals. So if you think about the broadcasters, give the NCAA and the member schools a whole bunch of money every single year to broadcast these things, in the billions of dollars, multi-year contracts to broadcast these things. So that's a huge annual cash flow for the NCAA. And the broadcasters also make a lot of money selling advertising, things of that nature. So, just as Patrick Risch had said, that when this doesn't happen, a lot of entities move out or miss out on this annual revenue. And then outside of the NCAA, he said it really hurts the niche leagues like the XFL and MLS. And since this article has come out, the XFL has actually suspended all their operations, laid off all their employees, and filed for bankruptcy. So you can see how quick, something like the coronavirus and shutting down all these sports can really affect a league, especially when it's in its infancy and just getting started. And then another league that, could potentially see some losses is the MLS. And then staying in the NCAA, the March Madness not going on really hurts smaller schools the most. Schools like Dayton. Dayton was making a really good run. They were ranked in the top 10 for a good majority of the year. And they're going to make a run at the tournament. And as we know from class discussions, if you make the tournament, make it far in the tournament, your conference gets some revenue share. So small schools like Dayton, small conferences like the MAC, are definitely missing out on some revenue that could be key to their operations. So some key points. Basically, the whole key point of this article was that COVID-19 is hurting almost every single league. The only league that they mentioned that missed out on kind of the height of it was the NFL. The Super Bowl just happened, and they barely missed out on that. But imagine if the Super Bowl wasn't able to happen, that would be a whole nother huge loss on top of March Madness. Huge revenue loss for the NFL. Another key point is, since these broadcast companies are contract binded, as I mentioned, often for multiple years, 10 years, 15 years, there's not much that they can do. The article mentioned some event insurance that was around $225 million. But if we're talking in the grand scheme of things, that is not even close to covering what the NCAA or the broadcast companies needed to bring in to make a profit or even cut even with the tournament. And so, some possible ways to kind of fix this. They mentioned additional contract extensions. So, since they missed out on this year, they might give them an additional year for no cost on the contract. So, say it was supposed to end 2025, they would extend it to 2026 with no additional cost. But you still lose a lot of that instant cash flow, that cash flow that you need right now to pay off any of your debts. They're missing out on that. So, it could potentially be very dangerous for broadcast companies. And you could see this affect other rungs on the ladder as well, which kind of brings me into my next slide, which is the market structure. So as you see, sports leagues and organizations are on the top, and they kind of flow into everything else that is happening here. So if you take away that sports leagues and organization box, you just have the broadcast networks and the cable satellite systems, advertisers. You don't have anything to actually show on those broadcast networks, if they're originally scheduled for sports. But I said it could affect other rungs on the ladder. So, with broadcast networks not bringing in as much money, not able to pay sports leagues or organizations as much, this could affect salary caps or team earnings, revenue shares for conferences, as I mentioned before. There's already talks of the NHL salary cap being lowered as well as the NBA salary cap. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they all kind of adapt to this change. Some of the potential solutions, as I already touched on in the previous slide, is finding something to fill that gap that was set aside for sports broadcasting. You saw the Michael Jordan documentary got pushed up a week early. As I mentioned, they're playing old games or even foreign sports. I know there's some leagues in China that are getting started back up. Maybe they could broadcast some Chinese basketball or some Chinese baseball. I knew for a while that Australian football was still running when all sports were canceled here in the United States. So I saw a big push for Australian football to get on ESPN and things like that. So just finding new, interesting sport-related content that you think your audience would like. Just try to collect as much advertising as possible, try to make up for that loss that they're seeing. And then I think both TV broadcast groups and sports organizations could mutually benefit if they were to rework the contract. They're not going to get much of that money up front that they need, but I feel like they should definitely put some sort of clause in there, if there isn't already, about something like this happening, because there hasn't been a cancellation of all sports like this in a while. A lot since World War II. So I think people are just now kind of realizing that they need to have these precautions in place, need to have these plans in place, so when it does get to this point, that they can fall back on their plans as much as possible. So some of our questions for the class: what do you think is the best course of action for TV networks currently? I think they are on the best course of action. Just rerunning old stuff, trying to make up for as much advertising as possible that they lost. So I think they're on the best course. I really, really appreciate them pushing up the documentaries and stuff like that, just really pushing entertainment for your audience, since they are home as well. Many of the audience members are home as well, probably watching more TV. So do you see this affecting the future of sports on TV? Personally, I do. There was a sliding class where we talked about ESPN and its kind of decline in viewership. And I think this honestly does not help them much at all. We're starting to see more of a shift to individual packages, like the NFL Red Zone package, NBA All Access package, things like that. And I think that this is just going to push that even more. People are learning how to live without sports, and I think that it's going to be more of a norm to kind of be subscribed to these packages. When this change is all over, I think a lot of people will cut back on some of their expenses. One, because the economy is going to be down, and two is they've just changed their lifestyle. So I think there's going to be even more of a decline in ESPN and these TV networks viewership. What consequences do you see could arise from this situation? One of the big consequences that I see right away is a lot of these places are like, oh, we'll play without fans, or we'll take these precautions, and it's just not very friendly for the athlete. Like, I know they're getting paid millions of dollars, but I'm sure they would much rather stay with their family than be, put up in a hotel for the whole season. And I think it would affect their play a little bit as well. And another consequence, the huge consequence that everybody's talking about, is college football. Now, there's been talks that they don't think college football will be affected. But if it doesn't happen, I know college football is one of the highest grossing sports in terms of revenue. So if it doesn't happen, this really could be a collapse of the NCAA. Schools stay afloat by their football program. Look at schools like Alabama or LSU. It's more than just the athletic program that is getting that money. It is a school as a whole. They're repairing infrastructure at LSU with some of their money. So I think it could have a bigger reach outside of sports than what people think. Um, so yeah, those are the two big consequences that I see. And that actually does it for my presentation. If you have any questions for me, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you have any discussion points that you think I should have added that would bring more discussion, please send them to me. I'd love to hear them. And thank you for watching.